Okay, perfect. So let's start from here. So this part, I assume you remember from yesterday. I will not revise this because these were just basic facts. And then we had a little discussion around this mesodermal germ layer and so on. I hope you remember it as well. So continuing where we had left off. Now, and this first point that we already know. So the heart is divided into 4 chambers, that is upper 2 chambers and lower 2 chambers. These chambers, the upper one, they are specifically called as atria. Individually, that will be called as atrium, that is atrium, atrium, and a plural form of that atrium is atria. And the lower chambers, that is the left and right lower chamber, individually they are called as ventricle. So that way there are 2 ventricles and the 2 atria. Atria, you will also find somewhere they will be called as auricles, but that is not widely used terminology. But yeah, you might find mention in some of the articles at times. So that is the atrium and the ventricle portion. Now, if I just show you in the diagram, okay, this will be little complicated. Let me show it to you here itself as of now. So this particular compartment is or the upper chambers. There will be one on the right, one on the left. That is what is atrium in singular form. And then we have ventricle, again the left and right, and they will form a lower compartment of your heart chambers. Now, the ventricles are the chambers that pump the blood. That means from the ventricle, that is the lower chamber, the blood will always flow out of it or out of the heart. So that is ventricles. And the atrium, these are the chamber that receives the blood. So they will always receive the blood. Ventricles, they will always pump the blood or push away the blood, push out the blood from the heart. It can be either to the body or to the lungs. So there will be 2 different like tracks. That is one oxygenated and the one deoxygenated. The oxygenated one will go to obviously different body parts, and deoxygenated one will obviously go to the lung for oxygenation. Then it will come back to heart again. And the atria, they will always receive the blood. So again the same, once oxygenated and second time deoxygenated. If it is oxygenated blood that heart is receiving, that means it should be from the lungs. And if it is deoxygenated, that means it has to be from the body. So again, if I show you this particular part in this diagram, so if you see, forget about left ventricle and right ventricle. One of the ventricle is pushing the blood out towards the body organ, and the other ventricle is pushing the blood to the lungs. This way you can also logically remember, right? Which ventricle is pushing what kind of blood and to where. And if you look at the atrial structures or the right and left atrium, you will see they are always receiving the blood. So blood is going inside the right atrium, and from lungs, it is coming and again going to the another atrium. So that way, atria, they are receiving chambers. Ventricles, they are the emptying chamber. That means they push away the blood out of the heart. So that is ventricle and atrium. And again, if you get confused ever at all, which is upper chamber and which is lower chamber, you can simply remember ABCD, like A to Z alphabetically. Atria is the first one, ventricle will be the second one. So ventricle is down, atria is on the top. So that is just a simple trick to remember. If at all someone feels like which is ventricle and which is atriums, that way. Now, both right atrium and the ventricle make up the right heart. So that means right side will have the right heart. So again here, right atrium and the right ventricle. These two will comprise of the right side of the heart, or it is simply called as right heart. And this left side will be having left atrium and left ventricle. That is the left side of the heart. And this is separated by a muscular wall, right? At the center, there is a wall within the heart, which is called as septum, or it is also called as heart septum. And that way, the blood from right side does not get mixed with the left side, and that remains on their respective sides itself. So that is the function of the septum, that is separation between right heart to left heart. And that is what is called as septum. So the right and the left region of the heart, they are separated by the wall of muscle. So that is septum. Of course, this point we had discussed at one point, that the heart, it houses one of the biggest artery in the body, and that is called as aorta. And if you remember, I had mentioned a point, aorta is almost like 4 centimeter in diameter. So it is like literally very wide in terms of its diameter. And the reason for it being wide is also obvious, because that is the one which is receiving all the blood from the heart, right? And that way, if it has to carry all the blood at once at every cycle of the heartbeat, then it has to be little wider, so that there is no sudden jerk of the pressure that is experienced by the body. Otherwise, you know that a pipe mechanism, if you have tap attached with a pipe, and if you keep a finger at the end of the pipe, the pressure is built up, and then you can reach to a longer distance, right? So that way the pressure is being built up. So similarly, if you have narrower diameter of the aorta, there will be quite a lot of pressure in your blood vessels, which you surely do not want, because that might just damage or cause hemorrhage like situation. Hemorrhage is bleeding, internal bleeding, that is hemorrhage. So that kind of situation you don't want. So obviously the aorta has to be a little wider in the pressure, so that the pressure is little diluted there. Yeah, and then septum, of course, we spoke. Now the right half, that is the right heart, the deoxygenated blood flows, and simultaneously the oxygenated blood flows on the left side. And this particular, both right and left side, they are separated by muscular septum, so that they don't get mixed. Oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, they stay separate, they don't get mixed. And the reason is because there is presence of septum. Okay, any question here? Anyone?
So the blood from the right ventricle, from the right heart, cannot go to the left heart, and vice versa.
Directly it doesn't.
Directly.
Like if you look at the flow, which we are going to see in the mechanism, if you see, let's say there is some blood, it will flow through this, come to body organs, same blood is going to right side. So that way, then left side blood is only going to right side. The only difference will be, this will be oxygenated, will be utilized, there will be no oxygen, the carbon dioxide will be exchanged, and that carbon dioxide with blood will come here, which will again go to lungs. I mean, it will come down in the right ventricle, it will get mixed with the lung. Again, oxygen will be exchanged, it again becomes oxygenated blood, comes back here, goes down, and then again flows. So that way, like there is no direct mixing of the blood.
Okay, and what about the beating of the heart? Does it beat ventricle atrium, or right heart, left heart, right heart, left heart?
So it beats atrium and ventricle. So that part also we will see in the mechanism. How does it exactly function? But just to quickly let you know, if the atria will contract separately, that means right and left will contract, and they will contract simultaneously, and then the ventricles will contract simultaneously. So that way it cycles. Anyone else has any other question? Okay, so if there are no questions, then we can move forward. So now, Yeah, correct. This is the right side. So there are quite a few other structures which are present in the heart. For example, the right ventricle pump the blood to the lung for reoxygenation through pulmonary artery. I guess I will come back to this point in the later slide because it has a little, what we say, it is an artery and it is carrying deoxygenated blood. So if you know by and large the function of the heart, and I don't know, was it there in the class 8 also, class 8 or 9, the heart or circulatory system?
Yes.
Okay, so then by and large you would know arteries, they will always carry oxygenated blood, right? And veins, they will always carry deoxygenated blood, right? And that is when whenever the injection is given, it is always given in the veins and they are not given to the arteries. That means if it is given in the arteries, then it will directly go to the what we call that particular organ. But if you are giving it to the veins, that means it will go to the heart where it will get mixed with all the other blood, like whether it's oxygenated, sorry, it will be surely deoxygenated because it is blood from the veins. And then from that, it will get distributed equally throughout the blood to all the body parts. So that is why the injection, they are specifically given in the veins. Only specific cases where you actually need a targeted delivery, then only the the injection is given into the arteries. But that's like a rare phenomenon. I hope you are getting what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So, and that is what we call as IV drip or IV saline. All of these that refers to the intravenous injections. Yes, Nandan.
Yeah. So, what about intramuscular injections?
Intramuscular injections, they are also there. So there are several types of injections, first of all. Like for example, intravenous, which I already said, which is given in the vein. Then there is intramuscular, which is actually given inside the muscles. It is not vein, no arteries. Obviously from there, from those muscles, it will get absorbed into the blood finally through the blood capillaries which are present around the muscle, and then it goes slowly into the whole of the systemic circulation. But the purpose of giving intramuscular injection is usually a slow and prolonged delivery of the drug, or prolonged delivery of the whatever that injected material is. For example, even the Covishield or what is that, Covax, these antibodies or vaccines, they are given intramuscularly, so that from that intramuscular site, they will be slowly absorbed into the blood, and then blood gets a slow response. Otherwise, the sudden surge of antigens or antibodies within body might cause anaphylactic shock. That is the sudden allergic response. So that should be avoided, and that is why there is intramuscular injection. Also in case of steroids, like if you go to a particular doctor with severe allergy, and then in that case, doctor prescribes a steroid, and that those steroids, they are usually given into the intramuscular site. Also, there are other logics. If the drug molecules, if they are water soluble, they are given intravenously, and if they are water insoluble, and if they are oil soluble, then the injections are given intramuscularly. And the intramuscular one is like on the just next to the shoulder, or in your tricep area, or on the hip, right, the upper part of the hip below the waist. So on that, these are all intramuscular injection, while intravenous ones are either in your like in IV drip, you would have seen around your, what is this called, backside of the, next to the wrist, yeah, backside of your hand, or even in case of next to the elbow joint on the front side at the center. There is a vein which you see in quite few people. So that way, that's what will be intravenous injection. Now, apart from this, there is something called as intraperitoneal, that is within your stomach directly. Stomach as in the peritoneal cavity, not the stomach as such. That is intraperitoneal. There is intraocular, that is directly inside the eyes. So there are several such type. Intralumbar, which is within the vertebral column, that is also there within the cerebrospinal space. So there are several such types depending on what is.
Intradermal is also there, no?
Intradermal is also there. So those who undergo that Botox treatment, skin rejuvenating treatment, the skin becomes very young and blah blah blah, whatever that makes, but that usually is given intradermal.
What about the anesthesia?
Anesthesia depends on what is the purpose of the anesthesia.
Local?
Yeah, even if it is local, then obviously, let's say they only want to numb my hand. So then it will be given in the arteries, right? Because only hand should get it. So arteries will be taking the blood supply from heart and they will be going towards the fingers. So if I give in that particular artery, then obviously the blood supply is only going to finger, and then the drug will be absorbed by the hand, and then the remaining blood will go to the heart. So as such, the side effect of that anesthetic agent will be less on the other organ and more on the hand, if that is local anesthesia. If it is general anesthesia, it is given in different ways. It can be given directly intravenously, or if it is lower part of the body that needs to be kind of anesthetized, then it is given in the just below the what we say lumbar vertebra, like at the backside. That is where it is injected. But again, depends on what is the purpose. So if it is general, it can even be given directly into the intravenous way. Okay, so I hope that was good additional information. So that way, yeah, what I was saying is, you know that basic classification of arteries carry oxygenated blood, veins carries deoxygenated blood, and this pulmonary artery is actually an exception to the artery which will be carrying deoxygenated blood. Yeah, so that's when I said it is little confusing here, because we haven't really studied the whole structure, why it has to be carrying the deoxygenated. So that we will see a little later. Why is this so randomly coming? I'm even skipping the second point. I'm sorry for that. The oxygenated blood is received by the left atrium, and it comes to the via pulmonary vein. Again, this is another exception to the vein which is carrying the oxygenated blood. So this part is a little confusing, because I don't know what I was thinking while making this, but this shouldn't be here. I will rearrange it later, but as of now I'm skipping this. I'll come back to it later. The external structure of the heart, that is the walls of the heart, it comprises of different like structures as such, what is known as pericardium, atrioventricular groove, that is the space or the kind of intrusive area between the atria and ventricle, and the interventricular groove, that is the space, a little space between two ventricles, and a space between atria and ventricle, and the pericardium, that is the outermost covering within which the heart is located. So the external heart lies in the thoracic cavity and is protected by the rib cage. So that is the location wise. Now the internal structure of the heart, external heart means how does it look from outside? That is what is referring to the external heart, and to what it is in connection with, that is rib cage within the thoracic cavity. While the internal structure of the heart, that is the internal walls of the heart, and even the walls of the heart, the wall of the heart is divided into 3 layers: epicardium, myocardium, and endocardium. And this should not be confused with the pericardium, which is the like outermost cavity within which heart is located. So just to give you brief analogy to this, we have thoracic cavity. Within that thoracic cavity, so the whole of chest is called as thoracic cavity. You will have skin, below skin you will have certain muscles, below those muscles you will have rib cage, right? Within that rib cage you will have lungs, left and right, and at the center you will have sternum. Towards the left side of the sternum you will have your heart, and around this heart there is a little like cavity like structure as in within like away from the lungs as in let me show you here. I guess I may not be so good in explaining this. Pericardium structure. So not this structure I want. Yeah, this diagram should be, yeah, around the heart. If you see this, I hope this blue part, correct. Yeah, so around the heart there is a pouch or cavity like structure which is filled with pericardial fluid, which you can see here. I hope I have little bigger diagram. I'm not sure. This one, yeah, this is again a better one. So if you see, this is the orange or whatever color this is, that is your heart, reddish, and the blue sac-like structure that is being shown, it is the pericardial sac, or what is also called as pericardium. And this is the external layer present around the heart, right? And the heart, this now again, and this blue portion is kind of not shown on the front side from which you are viewing, but otherwise it is kind of like you put potato in a sack. That is some exactly the similar analogy, like your heart is put in the pericardial sac, and heart itself has those 3 different layers, and these 3 different layers are this epicardium, myocardium, and the endocardium. Now EP refers to the outermost, so that is what is outer layer. Myo refers to the middle one, and also myo refers to the muscular layer of the heart, so that is middle layer. And the endo refers to the inner one, so that is endocardium. So these are the 3 different layers of the heart, and like I said, they should not be confused with the pericardium, which is even the outermost sac-like structure which is holding the heart itself. Okay, does anyone have any question here so far? I hope you are following, though I am only talking. I should ask questions so that you people will speak as well. But yeah, if you have any question, you can feel free to ask. Okay, so I assume there are no questions here. So then we will move on to the pericardium. So like I showed you in that particular diagram, the human heart is situated to the left of the chest and is enclosed within a fluid-filled cavity, what is known as pericardial cavity. And the walls and linings of this pericardial cavity is made up of a membrane which is known as pericardium. Yeah, and the analogy I gave you, like you have a sac-like structure and you are putting a heart inside that. So that sac-like structure is your pericardium, and then inside what you have is heart. And pericardium is a fiber membrane found as an external covering around the heart. And again, this is apart from those 3 layers which is present in the heart wall. This is acting as an external cover. It protects the heart by producing serous fluid. Serous fluid, this is referring to that little thicker fluid by the serosa layer. Like in the skin, usually you have different layer, and one of them is serosa. So that is something, the fluid which is secreted by that serosa layer, it's something similar with this pericardium as well. And this serous fluid or this pericardial fluid serves to lubricate the heart and prevent the friction between the surrounding organ. Now, this is the very common phenomena around each of the organ. So even if you have lungs, around lungs you have pleura or pleural cavity, which has this pleural fluid, which does not allow the friction between the lungs and the outside structure. Similarly, around the heart as well, what you have is pericardium, which is filled with pericardial fluid, and that does not allow the heart to friction with the neighboring organs or layers. So that way it is maintained frictionless, and that function is done by the fluid which is present in these spaces. Now, pericardium also helps by holding the heart in its position, that is holding it right next to the sternum, also in between the space which is provided because of the lungs. So that is the position which is being in which the heart is being held, and that is done by pericardium. And also maintaining a hollow space for heart to expand itself when it is full, that is the relaxation phase, and also the contraction. Contraction, obviously it will be squeezing in, so it does not need a space as such, but relaxation, that is expanding its structure, surely needs certain more space around the heart, and that is provided by this pericardium. So there are these two layers which are present in the pericardium, what is known as visceral layer and the parietal layer. Visceral layer, it directly covers the outside of the heart, right? That is it is present in the close vicinity to the heart. If you go from inner side of the heart towards the outer side, towards the pericardium, first layer that you get is visceral layer, and the parietal layer, it forms a sac in the outer region of the heart that contains the fluid in the pericardial cavity, that is parietal layer. So these are the two layers present in the pericardium. Again, I hope this is clear to you people, what is pericardium and what is its functions and the structure. Any question here? If not, I will ask you a question. Okay, so maybe who can say this? What will happen if the pericardium is not there? And someone wants to answer this, maybe can raise hand or speak it up. What will happen if the pericardium is not there? People, wake up.
So it will prevent friction.
Sorry?
And like pericardium prevents friction, right? So if it's not there, then like there'll be a lot of friction, which will make it hard for the heart to beat, and the heart also won't be in the it won't remain in one position.
Right. Correct. So like when you travel to a place, you always carry your clothing separately in one bag, shoes or chappals in separate bag, toiletries in separate bag, and then you put all of this in one bigger bag. So your body is something like that bigger bag, and this individually, all these internal organs, they have their own bag like cover or sack like cover. So that is the one way. So that way this pericardium is holding the heart at one place. So and that's how it functions as well. Yeah. So thank you, Meher. Now I guess I will move forward with respect to the three layers which are present around the heart. And what are these layers? That is epicardium, myocardium, and endocardium. Now, out of these are very interesting one is the middle one. Why and how, that we will see. So the epicardium is the outermost layer, and it is composed of a thin layered membrane that serves to lubricate and protect the outer section. So again, this layer has to go in sync with that pericardial space and the pericardium, because it is in contact with that pericardial layer and the fluid as well. So that way, this is thin layered membrane, and it acts as a lubricant and protect the outer section of the heart. So, and of course, that way it protects the inner section also. Myocardium, this is the muscle tissue. The actual cardiac muscle that you know of is present in this myocardium layer. That is the middle layer of the heart layers or heart walls. And it constitutes the middle layer wall of the heart. It contributes to the thickness. So whatever heart wall you have, its thickness is majorly contributed by the myocardium. So it's something like, again, if you have built a wall, a major space of the wall is taken by the bricks and the cement, and the plaster around it, whether inside or outside, that is just thin layers, right? The same analogy here as well, that thickest layer of the heart around the heart, that is myocardium, and the epicardium is on outermost side, which is a thin layer. And myocardium is specifically responsible for the pumping action. So now we already know that myocardium has those cardiac muscle cells. Specifically, they are also called as cardiomyocytes. These cardiomyocytes, they generate certain action potential, and they will instigate the electrical activity to start in the heart. There are several structures which is called as SA node, Purkinje fiber, and so on, which conducts the electrical activity, which we'll see further. But just to let you know here that it is myocardium which has the ability to conduct that electrical impulse which is generated within the heart walls, and which is ultimately leading to the contraction and relaxation, and thus the blood is pumped from heart to different body parts. So that main function is done by the myocardial layer of the heart. Then the third one, that is endocardium, that is the innermost layer, and it lines the inner chambers of the heart, and it will cover the heart walls as well. Heart walls, these are like a doorway or a gates within the heart, so that they either allow the blood to flow or they stop the blood flow. Either ways, depending on whether they are open wall or closed walls, that way they will function, but that they contribute majorly in the opening and closing, so ultimately allowing the blood to flow or not to flow. And this endocardium also prevents the blood from sticking to the inner walls. Otherwise, you can imagine there are so many cells within the blood, and they can just simply deposit on the inner walls of the heart. And that does not happen. The reason being, endocardium does not allow that to happen, and thereby preventing the potentially fatal blood clots. So the moment any cells, they become like a clump, or like they come together and form a mass of cell, there is a chance that they can create blood clots. And because of the endocardium, it does not allow the accumulation of the cell. So ultimately, no blood clots are formed, and that way the healthier condition of the heart is maintained. Okay, again, any question with these three: epicardium, myocardium, and endocardium? Okay, so if there are no questions, I feel we should stop here, because in rest of the time, which is we are going to discuss about more structure and the function of the heart, we won't be able to finish it in one go. So I would prefer to stop it here. And also I feel it's become like more monotonous class. So let me stop here. In the next class, we will start with the function along with the structure. So that will be, hopefully it will be more interesting for you to listen as well as ask questions, and we can continue from there. If there are any questions, I will take it. Otherwise, we are stopping for now.